Well, good morning everyone. My name is Chris. Welcome to Mudwalkers. If you haven't already checked out my Patreon link, it's in the description. Go ahead and check that out if you would like to support me financially or learn more about how. Yeah, so today we're looking at one of the many passages that people use to condemn naturism from the Bible. And first we're going to read through the story, and then I'm going to comment on this passage's relevance or irrelevance, we'll see, to the issue. So let's see. So lots of you know the story of Noah's flood. The whole flood happens, he gets off of the ark, and one of the first things that happens is this story. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be Yahweh, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." And that's the end of that story. So, one of the first things I always say about Genesis chapter 9 here is that we don't really know anything about pre-flood culture besides what we see here. And we just don't know what their values were like, what their relationship with nakedness was really like. And most fundamentally, we are told in this passage what these men did, not what we should do. There's no point in this chapter where the author takes an aside and says, therefore, this is why people have to wear clothes even in the presence of their near kin, is, from this illustration. The author never does that. We're told a story, but like we saw in the case of Adam and Eve, a story does not a rule make. We have to have a rule to have a rule, not simply a story. Yeah, but also, equally fundamentally, is that if we were to take the passage the way that so many Christians who argue against nudism want to take it, this passage means that it would be wrong to let people see you naked. Well, this passage would apply to next of kin. It would apply to fathers and their sons and sons to fathers. So, if we're going to take it that way, then you couldn't bathe your elderly grandparents, you couldn't bathe your own children, I suppose, unless you were wearing a blindfold. But that's ultimately what you would get. So mothers and daughters, no diapers, no baths, young or old. Because what we see in the passage is that these men were going about a practical function. They weren't simply hanging out with their dad. They were out to do something practical for their father, which was to go in and cover him up with something. But it says they walked backward with that cloth, and without looking, threw it over there to where they knew he was. So if we do take the passage to condemn nakedness, we're going to have to condemn nakedness for immediate family, which becomes a huge practical problem, and is another reason why we can be thankful that there isn't a rule presented in this passage, because this means that we can care so much better for our immediate family, because this passage doesn't make that kind of sweeping moral claim. But yeah, that's just about it for this video. I think I'm rambling now, so I think you know what time it is. That's about it for this video. Yeah, so next time someone brings up Genesis chapter 9 about naturism, let them know what I said in this video. There are lots of different problems with it, but we already went over those. In general, it's just not relevant. But at this point, I'm kind of rambling, so let's get into Patreon. This episode of Mudwalkers has been brought to you by my generous supporters on Patreon. Bugs getting me on the back. Shout out to Nature Him, Todd, Jacob, Jay Sweets, Edward, John S., Joseph, Charlie, Lionheart, Jesse, Adam, Edward T., Nate, Jay Good, Cyan, John W., Clifton, Trev, Scott, None here, Alan, Marty, Hank, Joseph G, Flavio, Austin, Martin, and Gabriel. Thank you all so much for everything you're doing on Patreon. You guys are making all this happen. You're keeping my work sustainable, so thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for supporting the channel. This is going to make it possible for Mudwalkers to grow and do bigger and better things as we go. And I just don't see another way to do that other than through your financial support. So thank you for being on Patreon. If you're not already a Patreon member, check out the link in the description and consider supporting me financially. But in general, just I'm glad to see what we're doing and where we're going, and I hope to do bigger and better content in the future as we go. Patreon or no Patreon, I think that Mudwalkers will continue to do bigger things. Hopefully, we'll get to interview some more great people soon, and maybe even, you know, eventually when we get there, maybe even do some debates. What do you guys think about that? Debates about naturism. I would do it. I don't know if I'm ready to debate the big names. I don't have the credentials for that, but you know, some smaller content creators maybe. Little debates. We can do little debates. That might be interesting. Have a great day. I will see you in the next one. Oh, yes.